what do you make of that message coming from NACI?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. I think that NACI had very good intentions, and those were to try and be as transparent as possible to ensure that they were being honest with Canadians. And while that may be the case, the problem is that we're dealing with a context of a vaccine that has been very much maligned, with bad communication and a lack of transparency on the part of AstraZeneca itself. And that has really undermined the really important benefits that this vaccine has had in terms of its effectiveness in the real world, especially in the UK, where the B117 variant is originating from and is problematic. So I think that the problem was that this nuance, which is important, was maybe highlighted a little bit too much, to the detriment of public trust, which has already been eroded quite significantly with the baggage that comes with this vaccine from the past 2 months. And that's what I think caused a lot of people to cringe, and maybe for jaws to open wide, thinking that's probably not the message that we want most people to hear, and certainly not the one that we want them to listen to the exclusion of the important benefits within the third wave in many parts of this country that are still struggling with the vaccine supply, and we are in a race against time.
Yeah, Dr. Bogoch, this notion of preferred vaccines, look, it's not that the science wrong. There's legitimate concerns about thrombosis, these blood clots, but was that an effective way to communicate the risks of the potential side effects from AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson versus the horrific third wave sweeping over the country and sweeping over places that thought they were clear? What did you make of all that messaging?
Yeah, I see your point, and I share your sentiment. I think that at the end of the day, you have to really communicate four things effectively. What is the benefit of the vaccine? Obviously, protection of yourself, but also protection of those around you. What are the drawbacks of the vaccine? Okay, it's the rare but not 0% risk of these blood clots, which can be severe, but of course we know they're rare. What are the alternatives, which is don't get a vaccine or wait for a vaccine where in that time you can get COVID? And what is the context? And the context, as Dr. Shakawi points out, we're in the midst of a huge third wave. We've never had this much COVID in Canada than ever before. We're all sitting in Ontario right now where, you know, you've got tents set up in front of some hospitals. We've got adults admitted to the pediatric ICU. We've got healthcare providers from Newfoundland that are coming in to help us out. And surgeries are canceled all over the province so we can care for our influx of COVID-19. Here is a vaccine that can truly save your life. You know, at least inform people and enable people to make an informed decision. You know, and you have to talk about risk, benefits, alternative, and context, and that really will help make people or help enable people to make an informed choice. And I think many, in fact, most will choose to take the vaccine, which again, I've been promoting. I think that's how we get to the answer. Take the first one that's available. It's through that thought process of going through risk, benefits, alternatives, and context. That's what lands you at take the first vaccine.
Yeah, but that's not what they said, Dr. Shakawi. They said, you know, take the first vaccine unless you're in a low area. Who determines that? And these aren't the preferred vaccines. Do you think this is going to contribute to hesitancy? Maybe people who got the AstraZeneca now they got the first shot, they don't want the second shot, or 1.5 million Canadians now scared to do that. What do you make of all that? And what should the fix be, Dr. Shakawi?
Well, as I said, I think it was problematic in terms of how it was framed. There's lots of issues that have already played out in terms of a lack of trust with respect to this sort of messaging and this vaccine in particular. And I think we have to recognize that there are consequences when you make a statement that suggests that one set of vaccines are preferred. And conversely, by default, that means another set of vaccines are not preferred. They're potentially harmful if you want to take that narrative and run with it. And I think there's two really important nuances that probably didn't come up when we talk about who's at risk here. Don't forget that you can go from a situation where you don't have a lot of circulating activity within your community to one in which there's a lot of activity, and that can happen in a very short period of time. Are you going to take that risk while waiting? The other problem relates to equity. You know, the supposition here was that if you are able to live at home, work from home, subsist fairly comfortably from home, this is an alternative that may be best for you. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people who don't have that choice, especially essential workers who we know and we've documented repeatedly have been disproportionately impacted by this third wave. Those are the people filling up our ICUs and dying. Is it fair to say that they should be receiving a product that maybe isn't the preferred product, while others who perhaps are more privileged and have other resources have the luxury of making another choice? That's a really problematic issue to play out. And I don't think that that's something that we want to have Canadians believe is what our recommendations are.
Yeah. I should say, people look at the UK, they were dragged out of the pandemic by AstraZeneca, right? It seemed to be good enough for them. Over 20 million people have had AstraZeneca. Dr. Bogosh, what's the fix here? Because you got the Prime Minister and Public Health saying these are all safe vaccines. You got NACI saying they're safe with an asterisk unless you don't feel it's safe, and then you should maybe wait for the preferred vaccine. What is the fix? Do we need a single voice here to avoid hesitancy, fear, just one source as opposed to two conflicting sources?
Evan, I truly don't know the answer to that. I truly don't know. I mean, it's helpful to have lots of experts weigh in. It's also helpful to have diversity of thought and diversity of opinion. But clearly, we have an issue where we are now, as Dr. Sharkawi pointed out, in a position where we're eroding trust in some of our institutions and in some of the vaccines. I mean, vaccination is our way out of this pandemic. We have to get as many Canadians vaccinated as quickly as possible. Any step towards speeding up the vaccine process, ensuring it's done in an equitable manner, getting access to more vaccines, using the vaccines we have in a smart way, like that's clearly the right direction. I mean, I think we can improve our communication. I think we can improve our community engagement. I think we can enable people to make good decisions and smart decisions, but operationalizing that is going to be challenging.
I got about 10 seconds here, just real quick. I'll just go to you, Dr. Bogosh, just real quick. I know there's a study in the UK about mixing and matching, right? That if you had the AstraZeneca as your first dose, the viral vector, your second dose you might get a Pfizer or a Moderna. It's okay to mix. Is that a decision that NACI might have to come to soon as well, Dr. Bogosh? You think that's coming?
Yeah, they're going to be opining on this probably in the middle of the month. No one has a crystal ball, but just pure speculation here, it's very likely that that's going to be a safe and effective approach. It's very likely that people who had a first dose of vaccine A will get a second dose of vaccine B. But again, let's wait for the data before we conclude that. It's likely going to happen.
Right, and because we're getting a lot of Pfizer and Moderna, so we'll find out. When Dr. Bogosh and Dr. Sharkawi, the two of you have been incredibly helpful in balancing the communication with the frontline work you do. Thanks, gents. Always appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Thank you.